Hi, I'm George Pearson, and these are just a few examples from some of the training videos I have here on YouTube. Now, when you're working with the training, following along the training, if you want to get the materials I used in the training, just go to the description down below and click on the link that's at the top of the description, and this will take you to a page where you can download the materials. Please subscribe, click the like button, and of course always share on Facebook, Twitter, or wherever. I really appreciate that. Okay, let's go ahead and get started with the video. In this Photoshop Elements project, we'll be making a lightning bolt image here, combining a couple of pictures and then doing a lightning bolt completely by scratch here inside of Photoshop Elements. Let me show you the two pictures that we'll be using to make this image. Let's close this one out. There we go. We have the sky right here. This is our skyline. And then we have one over here, lots of interesting clouds. Be using these two pictures. The link for downloading these two pictures is available in the description. Moving back over to our sky image here, just grab the background layer and drag it onto the image here with the skyline. We can then close that. So our two pictures are now together. And what we want to do first is to resize this image so that it fits the other image properly. So I'm just going to put it kind of somewhere in the middle here like that. And then let's grab the upper corner here and pull this out until you're just a little bit past this side. Do the same thing over here, just a little bit past that side. There we go. And I'll put it up to the top up there. Now I want to pull the image down, grab the bottom handle here and pull this down until the sunset is down pretty close to the bottom, down there somewhere. And choose OK. Now we're just using this to add some additional content into our other pictures. We'll be blending this layer into the picture in behind. And we'll be doing that with a blending mode up here. And then what I want to use here is the hard light blending mode. And there we go. So it kind of gives us that interesting dark sky up there. Ignore the stuff down here. We're going to fix that in just a minute. So there's an interesting dark sky. Okay, let's go ahead and hide that one. And now we can zoom in on this. We'll be working on our background layer here, zooming in on this one and making a copy of this, and then using that copy, making a selection of our skyline, and then creating a layer mask for the skyline so we can then look at our other image in behind here. So take your background, drag it up onto the new layer button up there. So have a copy, background, and background copy. Pull background copy above the cloud picture. Let's just rename this one. I'll call this one Skyline. There we are. Okay, next step. Making a selection around the skyline and using that to make a layer mask. So let's zoom in. I'll do this pretty quickly here for this video, but you probably should take a little bit more time than I'll be doing just to do a nice clean job. And I'll back out just a touch there. There we go. That should do it. Okay, I'm using the polygonal lasso tool right there. And if you want, you can set the feathering down here to 1 pixel. And then just pull this over, get a real nice large size here. There we go. Okay, I'm going to start right here. We'll come back to this point to finish, but I'll start right there at the bottom left-hand corner. And I'm just going to use this and then go up along the image and trace along the edge here of the buildings. And again, on this kind of a selection technique, it's best to take your time. Don't worry about little antennas like that one. Just ignore those. They'll be just fine. But take your time, do a nice little job in here. And it's just a matter of just working around the whole image. I'm not going to worry about that little thin space there between those two buildings. That's okay. Not going to worry about that light up there. I'll try to come in a little bit here on these little peaks on this. Very big sky in there. So again, just continue to work around and make your selection. And at this point, I'm going to pause the video, and then I'll finish making the selection, working around all these buildings. And then once the selection is done, I'll bring the video back up again. So this will be back up again in just a moment. And there we go. There's the whole selection. As you can see, I didn't bother grabbing that antenna up there. That's just fine. And went clear on all of the buildings in here, and then around the outside, around the bottom, back up this side, and back in over here. So that gives me the selection of just the buildings. Now that we have that, we can go up here. We're on the top image, our skyline image, and then just click on the little button right there. This is the layer mask button, and there we go. There's a layer mask with just that image. So this is white. White shows, black hides. So this will be showing the buildings and then hiding the sky part. So this actually is the sky from this picture that we're seeing. So now we can bring back in our layer 1, and that's our dramatic sky. Let me just rename that layer while I'm at it. I'll call that one the dramatic sky layer. Okay, that's all we need to do with the sky. That's already set to go. Now we need to put in here our lightning bolt. And I'll be going from about up here, about where the 700 is. This is all pixels on this one. Right click and it's set at pixels, as you can see right there. About from the 700 point and coming down about into here. So there's kind of a lightness in the clouds right there. I'll start right about in there. And then maybe up here just a little bit. And then coming down through those buildings and past here. Now, we want the lightning bolt in behind these buildings. So the lightning bolt layers need to be above the dramatic sky and below or behind the skyline here. To make it so you can see the whole thing easily, let's just go ahead and hide that layer for a moment. Don't worry about this stuff down here, that doesn't matter. So hide this stuff and then make a new layer right here. And again, we'll be painting this in using our regular tools. So I'll first go over here to color and let's change this to white at the front. If you don't see the colors, just click on the little black and white icon right there and then click on the little double arrow to reverse that. So there's our foreground color of white. Grab the paintbrush, and then in the paintbrush settings down here, we want to set this down to a setting of 7. I just docked that up there. If you don't know how to dock and undock, this little trick here, let me show you that real fast. That's Edit, Preferences, General. Make sure that this line, Allow Floating Documents in Expert Mode, is selected, and Enable Floating Document Window Docking is selected. Make sure that those two are selected. Choose OK. Now you can drag it off to float or put it back up there to dock it again. Okay, back to our paintbrushes down here. I want this set at 7 pixels, and since we're going for a hard edge here, I want a hard edge on our lightning. I want to have this as a hard edge paintbrush. I'll start off with the 9 right there. Double click on that. That gives me the hard edge at 9. I'll just reset that to 7, and there we go. Now again, I want to go from the upper area here about 7 and right down here somewhere, and then right down through the buildings and towards the bottom. Let's just float this again. There we go. So from about up here, right down through the buildings, and then just past the buildings down there. Okay, now again, we're doing this kind of direction. We're going to freehand this. And you want to be just kind of a little bit squiggly like that. Just go ahead and let your hand kind of make, messy squiggle things. Just like that, just a little bit rough in behind that building. Okay, that's our first lightning stroke. Now I want to put in a second one down here, just a little fork off the side here. And let's make this one just a little bit smaller. I'll dock that again. So right down here, so it's outside the building. Let's set this back to 5, so it's 5 pixels, and then pull a second line just like this, just kind of going off this way someplace. And again, in behind the building like that. So there's our main and first secondary lightning strike. So I'm going to call this one Bolt 1. There we go. Let's do a new layer here. This is going to be Bolt 2. Actually, there are several bolts on this one. And these are the first set of secondary bolts. So change the size again down to 3 this time. So I want real small. There we go. And I'll put in just a few of these. A couple up here, a couple down here, maybe one coming off this And see where this kind of little points come out? That's a good place to start. So just grab one of those points and and I kind of messed up on that one. Let me undo that. Okay, let's try that again. Just come down and just do a few little like this, and coming out this way a little ways. Let's do another one right down here. Maybe do a second split off of that one, and we'll do a little one down here. There we go. That's pretty good. So that's our secondary levels here of lightning. Do the same trick again, a third layer up here, and this will be bolt 3 for our third set of bolts, and we're keeping the same size this time, and these bolts are coming off of our secondary bolts, and you'll see why in just a bit here. There we go. And just a few of these things in here as well. You can put one of these if you want to off of your main bolt as well. I think I'll bring something right down in here. And it's kind of just doing a little bit of a jerky kind of scribbly motion in here. It doesn't need to be clean. You don't want to have anything kind of smooth. You want to be really kind of rough and jerky when you're doing this. Okay, so there's our basic lightning bolt setup with our main bolt right there, our secondary bolts right there, and our third bolts in there. Okay, I'll go back to the move tool now, and we'll leave the main bolt as is. On the secondary bolts, bring the opacity down to 60% on this one. There we go. And the third level bolts, bring the opacity down to 30%. As you can see, it's beginning to look a bit better now, more realistic. Okay, so that's our first setting. We now need to put in a glow in behind these bolts. So make a copy of each one of these bolt layers. Take our bolt layer 1, make a copy of that one, and put it underneath bolt 1, and I'll rename this one glow. There we go. Same thing on bolt number 2. Make a copy of that, drag it underneath. So it's bolt 2 copy. Let's rename this one glow. And then same thing on bolt 3. Drag it up here. There's our copy. Put it underneath bolt 3 and rename this one bolt 3 glow. Okay, now we need to blur these out, and we'll be using this. We'll be using a Gaussian blur for this one. So go up here to the filter menu and blur right here, and then Gaussian blur. There we go. Now the blur you want on this is going to be a very, very small blur. We don't need very much to do this. So set the blur down to 5. So it's just 5 pixels right there, very small blur. You can kind of see it right along the edge. If I show and hide that, there it is, just a little small blur in behind that. Choose OK. Let's go up here to bolt 2 glow. This time I can just click on the Gaussian blur up here. We'll put the exact same settings in. And bolt 3, same thing, Gaussian blur. There we go. And it's looking better. We're beginning to get someplace now. Okay, so we have our basic glow settings in here. Now at this point, if you want to, you can go ahead and bring your skyline back in again and see where your lightning bolt is coming in behind your building. So there we are. Okay, so far so good. So we now have our 3 levels of bolts, and we have our background glows on those. Now on the main bolt glow down here, let's bring the opacity on this one down just a little bit. I want to bring this down to about 75%. There we go. It just softens it up just a little bit on that edge, so it's not quite as bright for that main bolt because it's a very, very bright bolt. Other ones, they're just fine. Okay, so we have that stuff done now. Next thing we want to do is we want to soften up the edges of the bolts. We want to have the bolts kind of fade out at the top and at the bottom, at the edges, at the ends of the bolts. So you need to fade into the background. You want to fade the bolt, but not the glow. So we're going to be doing this on the bolt level. And let's go ahead and put a layer mask on this. So let's do a layer mask. Now by default it shows everything. So we can add black onto this to fade the ends out. And we'll go over here to our paintbrush. Set it at black, that's fine. Now you want a soft brush on this, so it's any soft brush. And then set the size up pretty high, and we'll set this at 200 pixels, that should do. So there we go, big, large, soft brush. Make sure that you're on the layer mask side, look for that light blue outline. If you see it over here, just double click on the layer mask light blue outline. Okay, now, and again, make sure on the bolt and not the bolt glow. So you're on the bolt layer. Then just come in and just kind of tap into the ends there and see how it's hiding the end of the bolt, but we're seeing the bolt glow in behind. Same thing at the top here, just kind of paint that in like that. So it just kind of fades out the end. Now I want to do the exact same thing on these two levels as well. Now the bolt and bolt glow should have the same opacity, they do, and then those are the same opacity, that's all fine, that's good. So go back up here to bolt number 2. And let me just undo that brush to reset a couple of things here. So we're on the bolt 2 level. Make sure you put that layer mask in. There we go. Make sure you see the black over here. There it is. Leave everything else the same. And then just come back in and click on the ends and find the ones that are the number 2 size. There we go, kind of fade those ends out. Same thing, bolt number 3 up here, put in the layer mask, there it is, and same thing, just come in and click on the ends of those to fade the ends out. So all of the ends should just kind of fade out like that. There we go. Okay, so there's the basic lightning bolt set in place now. Of course, we need to make this a bit fancier still. I want to have some coloration going on here, make it look a little bit more interesting. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I also want to have a glow in the sky up here caused by the lightning bolt. All right, let's just pull this down a bit like that. And come down here to the dramatic sky layer. Click on that. And then put a new layer above this layer. There we go. Now this is going to be our glow, and I have 2 of these. The first one is going to be the large glow, and the second one will be a smaller glow. Go back over here to our brushes. We want to have white. That's fine. We're still at white. And then brush. I want a larger brush again. So set this up here to 500 pixels, real large brush, as you can see there, very, very large brush. And we're going to paint this right in here with this very large soft white, and there's large glow, and it's kind of like that. Making just a big, big mess of white right in there. Now I need to blend this into the background, obviously. So we're going to be changing the blending mode on this. And that's normal. And then come down here to overlay. There's the overlay blending mode. So you can see there it is with the overlay in there. Let's now bring the opacity down to about half. So I'll set this at 50%. You can see there it is with and without. So adding just kind of a nice background glow in there. There we go. Looks good. And I want to soften the edges up a little bit of this as well. So let's go back over to our Gaussian blur, filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and set this at 50. And there we go. Just a real nice soft lighting up of the sky in behind there. So there it is. That's a bit of a glowing effect. Okay, I want to make this even stronger, but at a smaller setting. So let's make another layer right there. This is going to be our small glow. And change the brush size to half of this, so 250 pixels. And then right in the middle part in here, I want to just do a bit of a glow like that. So it's smaller than the other one, but it gives us a nice little small glow. Let's change the setting here to overlay. So you can see it right there. There it is. And we're going to come in and do some other little adjustments on this one. I'm not going to do an opacity change unless we need to, but I'll be putting in an adjustment layer above this. We'll change the coloration of this a little bit. So go up here to Layer, New Adjustment Layer, Hue Saturation, right there. Now this little line here, it says Use Previous Layer to create clipping mask. Click on that and choose OK. That will then do our coloration and apply it only to just that one layer. There's a little indent there. Okay, so we're all set. Now change the hue in here. I want to have the hue up at 44, up in the blue magenta range up in here. Set the saturation to 54. We'll take it up quite a ways. And then we're going to change the lightness in here to a -10. There we go, and click that one off. So that's looking pretty good. Let's now put some color into this glow, and we'll do it by putting a layer above this layer. So Layer, New Fill Layer, Solid Color. This time don't check that checkbox, leave that unchecked. Choose OK. And come down here and click into the area right there, kind of a magenta color, and choose your magenta. There we are. Obviously we don't want that, so we need to do something about masking this out. So let's just hide that for a second. Come down to the small glow right there. Grab the magic wand tool, and the tolerance can be somewhere around 50 or so. Down there somewhere is fine. And then click in the middle of that glow, and that selects the glow area, just like that. Now with that selection down here, use that to create a layer mask. Click on the layer mask button. Here's our layer mask. Now drag this layer mask up on top of this one, just like that. It's going to transfer it from here up to here. Just choose OK or yes, and that then moves it up here. If I now show this, there is that limited to that area. Okay, now I want to do a couple things on this. Make sure back on this layer, double click on this side so you're on this side of the layer. That's fine. And let's change the opacity down to 90%, so you can kind of see through just a little bit in here. And now we need to adjust the Gaussian blur. Click on the Gaussian blur side. Make sure that you're seeing that outline. And we're going to soften this out. So filter, and as I just mentioned there, the Gaussian blur. There we go. Now on the blur on this one, I'm going to change the blur up to about 240. So it's going to be real soft. Just like that. You can adjust the amount in here if you want to kind of play around with it and to get just the amount of glow that you want. I'm keeping mine fairly soft. So we're really blurring out that selection there, and that blurred out selection gives you that kind of a colorized area in the sky up there. And choose OK. So I put this down to, let's see if we can see the whole thing here, 199. Let's just call it 200. There we go, real soft. So here it is without the Gaussian blur, there it is with the Gaussian blur. It just kind of softens it up and adds a bit of color into the sky up there. So there we go, that takes care of that part of this. All right, next thing I want to do is I want to go up here to the bolt, which is that one right there. Here's our main bolt. Come down to the blur layer. That's our glow layer right here, bolt glow. And we'll add some color onto this layer. So again, not the bolt layer, but the bolt glow layer. Same idea, we'll be using a fill, this time a gradient fill. So go up here to the layer menu, new fill layer gradient, and this time we're going to be clipping this again. So that adds that into that layer. So here's our gradient fill control. Click on the gradient right there. That brings up all of our gradients. Doesn't matter which one you choose in here, anything is fine for a start. I'm going to just use this one here, the blue, red, yellow. Double click on that. Make sure you're okay. Looks good. Choose OK. And choose OK. So there's our gradient. Notice how we get this coloration now at the ends of the lightning bolt. Let's now make this a nice coloration. So we're going to be making some small adjustments in here. So click on the gradient again. Brings up the gradient editor. And I want to just pull this yellow off like that. Pull the red clear over to the right hand side. Pull the blue right into the middle somewhere. If you watch down here, it should be at 50%. And then click just down below on this side and push that to the left. You get a blue color stop. Make sure you see that black triangle above there. Just click on it for the black triangle. Click on the color and come down into the bright greens here. Just choose any old bright green like that. So bright green, blue, and red. Now notice if I have either one of these two stops selected, I can see my little color midpoint right there. So I'll grab this midpoint and I'll pull this over here until it says 75 right there. Click on the blue, grab this midpoint and pull this to the left until it says 25. There we go. So it's a lot of green, a little bit of blue, and a lot of red. Choose OK. And choose OK again. And there we go. That gives us colors at the end. Kind of a reddish up here, and then down to the greenish down below there. You can change it if you want to, different colors. But that's what I'm using for this particular demo, kind of the red to the green. So that takes care of the lightning bolt in here. Now if it's a bit too bright, it's kind of rich up there, all you have to do is bring down the opacity just a little bit to soften that effect up. And make sure that I'm on the right side here. There we go. So bring down maybe about 50% or so. Looks pretty good. So a bit of color at the ends, and that takes care of the lightning bolt. Alright, last little thing to do in this is we have the edge of the building in here. This edge here should be lit up by the lightning bolt. The top of this should be lit up. That side should be lit up a little bit. And over here should be lit up a little bit, and down here. So we need to have some light on these buildings. So I'll do that way up here. Go up to the skyline layer and make a new layer above the skyline layer. Go back over to the paintbrush. You should still be on white. Should be a soft brush, and set the size to 50. And we're just going to add a little bit of light along these edges. And just paint just right along the edge like that. A little bit here, and a little bit up here, and a bit right in here. And over along right down that building there. Maybe a bit too far on that. Up to here. And a little bit right down there. There we go. So a little bit of light on those edges. Now they're going off into the sky. Obviously, I don't want to have that. So go to the layer mask here. Hold down the Alt key rather. So Skyline Alt key, pull that up, and that duplicates that layer mask. So they're now just inside of the buildings, as you can see there. And finally, click up here, and we're going to change the blending mode on this down to a soft light blending mode. Here we go, nice little highlights on those edges. So you can see that with and without. There is without, and there it's with. Just adds a nice little glow onto the edges of those buildings that are facing towards that lightning stroke. It's a bit more realistic looking. So that's not quite right, and that looks good. And this is the building glow. There we go, and that finishes off our lightning picture. Let's now see how it looks. Just pull this up here and click on the bottom layer someplace. There we go. So there it is. There's our lightning streak realistic lightning streak in here. Let's see how this compares. I'll take our background layer, drag it up to the new layer button just like that. And let's just drag this layer up to the top. And there we go. So there is the original. And there's with our new lightning sky. Okay, that's how you can make a realistic looking lightning bolt inside of Photoshop Elements. Thank you for watching this special Photoshop photography project video. Don't forget to subscribe so that you will get first notice of new project videos in the future. Just click on this link right here where it says subscribe here. You can get all 12 project videos in this series along with 26 special videos demonstrating the tools and techniques that I used in these projects by clicking on this link right down here. And then thank you again for watching this